Hello, this is Duke with an explanation type video for this assignment, laser cutting file practice. So I went over this a little bit in class and wanted to make a follow-up video to maybe go a little bit more in depth and or help you get a refresher if you're watching this a little while after we talked about it in class before you're doing the assignment. This assignment is meant to help you practice using the laser cutters with the foam board, which is something that we'll do a couple times this semester, once in this practice assignment and at least one other time when we're modifying our aircraft later in the semester. This is a new process for a lot of you, especially using Adobe Illustrator, and I know there's a bit of a learning curve, but just realize, especially for this assignment, it's really basic what you need to do. On the later assignment, we'll do something more advanced, where we're modifying an actual design, but for this assignment, you can do something as simple as draw a circle and cut it out of foam board on the laser. I'm just trying to get you to use the software a little bit and use the lasers, so that way when you do the later assignment, you feel more confident and you know what's supposed to be going on. Excuse me. So when we're looking at this assignment here, basically we have this section, okay? To complete this assignment, you need to take one of the files provided below and modify a piece from the file for laser cutting and then cut it out, or draw your own file from scratch and then cut it out. Okay. What you'll submit to the assignment will be a copy of the modified or drawn from scratch Adobe Illustrator file, as well as a photograph of the physical piece of foam that you cut out at the Idea Factory. Now, if you want to look ahead in class, you'll see in a little while, actually, let's look at a calendar real quick. And this, of course, is spring of 2024, so it may differ a little bit if you're watching this video later on. But if you look a little bit later in class, let's see, into March here. Okay, we have our final project modification proposal here the week after spring break. And then we're going to work on that modification towards basically towards the end of the semester. So here in April is when the final project modification is due. That means the bigger laser cutting project would be due at that time. And so that project, I'm not going to go into that a ton in this video, but it involves you laser cutting something that you've changed on the design of your airplane, cutting it out, wiring it up, doing whatever you need to do to get that to be able to be used on your aircraft in flight. A lot of you will probably do a different type of wing from the default wing, which is a great option. And so if you're wanting to, you can use this practice assignment that's due here sooner as a way to kind of double dip a little bit or get some part of that later assignment done, or at least try it out. You know, if you're going to do an attempt here and then make some changes for it to work better later, then that's a good option as well. But if you want to keep it simple, that's fine too. Like I said, either way works. You can modify something or you can draw one from scratch. So let's look at that a little bit. If you want to modify a file that we already have, laser cutter files are right here. This links to Canvas, and we'll have the Explorer. I need to put the Outlaw in here as well, so I'll make sure the Outlaw 250 file is in here as well. And then we have some extra files. These are planes that you can cut out if you want to. They're all flight test planes. All these are from the flight test company. They're designs you can use, and you can take those and tweak them or modify them somehow for this assignment. And some of them even have some good options, like you could take a wing from a different plane, like say the wing from the, let's see, Cub, and you could use that wing and modify it for use on your FT Explorer later in the semester if you wanted to. If you're not sure what any of these planes or plans are, without having to download the files and do all that, just to see the file, you can easily just Google search flight test, let's see, Cub, for example, and we'll get some images, of course. We can see what it looks like. There's the plane. Looks kind of like the same foam board as we have. You know, this is the brown color foam board or the white color foam board that we have in class right now. But you can see how the plane looks and see, oh, that looks interesting. Maybe I'll grab that file and I'll tweak that one a little bit for my modification. So whatever whatever works for you is fine for this assignment, and you can use any of these for your later assignment as well. So I already have a lot of these downloaded on my computer, so I'm not going to download any right now. But let's go over to Adobe Illustrator and look at that a little bit more in depth and see what we could do in Adobe Illustrator. Okay. This is an example I was using in class the other day. Let's go over to our Outlaw 250. Okay. So this is our Outlaw 250 plane. If you're using that in class when you're watching this video, that's where this comes from. It's a single sheet of foam board. And here is our FT Explorer. It takes 4 sheets of foam board. It's a much bigger plane, of course, but you can see all the different parts and things here. So for this assignment, let's start with drawing something from scratch, and then we'll move on to modifying an existing part. Again, you can choose either one of those options. When you go to make a new artboard, these white boards are called artboards. So we'll say File New, okay? And you want to have 30 inches by 18 inches selected because that's how big the laser cutter's bed is that it can actually cut on. And then you want to make sure your color mode here is set to RGB, not CMYK. That's important for the colors of our lines. So I'm going to hit create. It's going to create a nice clean slate for me, a blank artboard. Okay, and then I can do whatever I want on this board and cut it out, or like I said, we can modify something. So first I'm just going to draw something. I'm really only going to use these top four tools here. We have our selection tool. This one's, if you click and hold, let's see, click and hold on this, direct selection tool, group selection tool, lasso tool. Okay, we have our pen tool, which has the pen and anchor point tool, and then we have our other pen tool. I'm not sure if this is called curved or something like that. Curvature, there we go, curvature tool. Okay, allows you to draw things. So let's say I want to just draw like, I don't know, a smiley face or something. So I'm going to go ahead and click, click, and kind of curve it out, click, and we're going to join it back up there. Okay, there's a nice circle. And then I can take the pen tool, I can make, I don't know, a little eyeball. This is a strange eyeball. Okay. Oh, I should just show you how we do this here. So I have an eyeball, and I may want to make the same kind. I can just select it with this black arrow here, and Control C, Control V. Now I have another eyeball, and move them like this. Okay, and we'll do a smile with that pen tool again, the curvature tool. Okay, we'll just click here, click here. So you click to make the line, then you can move this third point around to make it curve. So I'm going to kind of make it curved like this. Okay. Oh, and we will hit escape to get out of the tool, and then I'm going to move these, move the smile down a little bit so it's not blocking the eyeballs. It will kind of draw a line across here, even though you don't see a line. That's why it's blocking the eyes when I cover it up, if that makes sense. Okay. There's my eyeballs right there, and my smile. There's my smiley face. Okay. Like I said, you can draw whatever you want for something drawn from scratch. I think more useful is to try to modify something, but whatever you're comfortable with. Once I have my shape that I want to cut out on the foam board, then I'm going to go ahead and work on the part that we talked about in the lecture. Okay, so in my lecture slides here, I had some information for you regarding line colors. Okay, the colors of the lines. We talked about red being cut through, blue being score, and black being engrave. Okay, and then we also talked about line thickness. Okay, so I'm going to reference these two a little bit, and that will help us make sure we have the right colors and things in Adobe Illustrator so the laser cutter can actually recognize the lines as lines and know what to do with those lines with its power and speed settings. Okay, so let's go back to our Illustrator here. If I want to cut this little circle out, right, of the main sheet of foam, right, I need to have this outside line be my cutting color, which is red. So I'm going to select that line, or the path, as it's called. And over here on the right-hand side, we get this appearance category. This little black box right here is the stroke, or the color of the line itself. If I were to have a fill color and fill it in, it would make things inside the circle that color. We don't really want a fill, so I'm going to say no fill, okay? But we want the line to be a specific color. Okay, and so here's our RGB spectrum. Now if we want it to cut, we need it to be 255 red, 0 green, 0 blue. So there's our cutting color, pure red, we'll say. Okay, so now the line's red, and if we click on it again, and click on the stroke thing over here, make sure the palette's selected, not the boxes, but the palette, you can see 255, 0, 0. So we're good there. Okay. If we're going to cut this out of the foam board here, I probably want to either cut out the eyes or maybe cut like halfway through, like a kind of a half cut, score cut on the eyes and mouth, so you can see them, but they're not like cutting out. You could have them cut out in this case. You just want empty eye holes right there, and then you want it to cut all the way through. But I'm just going to use a score cut, a halfway cut, just to demonstrate that. So let's say I want to do that with the eyes and the mouth. I can click on one eye. I can hold, I think it's Shift. Click on two eyes, Shift again. Now I have the two eyes and the mouth all selected at the same time. Okay. And I can go over here again to my fill and stroke. I'll say fill, no fill. Okay. Oops. Sorry. No fill. There we go. And stroke. We want these to cut halfway through, so we need a blue line. A pure blue in RGB world is 0 red, 0 green, and 255 blue. Okay. Now we can select and we see that those are blue. All right. We also should not have that problem where it kind of covered the eyes before, because before it had a fill across here when it was covering up the eyes earlier, but we turned off the fill, so now we can put the smile even way up here and it won't kind of cover up that eye. All right. So there's our smile. Looks pretty good. Let's say, just for demonstration's sake, I actually decide, oh no, I don't want to cut these. I want to engrave the smile. Okay. Now engraving will take a lot longer than cutting. Okay, so cutting and scoring are the fastest operations. Engraving takes a lot longer because the laser goes very low power and more slowly, and it kind of tries to color in the line. Okay. So if I wanted to do that, I could. I just need to get a pure black, and that is 0, 0, 0 on the RGB spectrum. Okay. Now it's hard to see, but you can see maybe on the screen now this is blue and this is black. Okay. So in that case, this file is basically nearly ready to go. We have our colors selected, but now we need to make sure, just like in the slides talk about line thickness, okay, is also important to the laser cutter. So let's go in and adjust the line thickness of our piece or part that we drew. Once I have all the colors the same, that works great. I can just do Control A. Okay, it selects everything in the image, or you can just use your black selection arrow and draw a box around everything, and it will select all the parts of the image. You'll see here the stroke is question marks because we have multiple colors here, but that doesn't matter. We want to go over to the line thickness, which is right here. If you click the drop down, it goes down pretty small, but it doesn't go down as small as we need. So we're just going to manually type it into the box there. 0.001 point. Okay. And that's what we need the laser cutter to be able to cut out correctly. It needs to be that thickness. So it's 0.01. Again, that's referenced here in this, referenced here in the slide. Okay. 0.001 point is how thick the lines can be, so laser cutter will recognize them. So now it's really hard to see our image because it's so thin that it kind of shows up as faint on the screen. If we zoom in, it's a little bit easier to see it, but still not much. You can kind of see it when you hover over it, right? So this is typically the last step you'll do, because once you do this, it's hard to move things around if you can't see anything. But now my file is basically ready to save. Over in Idea Factory, you'll get a flash drive, save it to the flash drive, and then you'll go to the laser cutter computers from there, open the file up, and basically print it. It's kind of like a printing, like you're printing to a normal printer operation, but it'll print to the laser cutter to be used in the laser cutter software. The folks in Idea Factory can help you with that side of it. I'm happy to help you as well if I was over there, but I'm not typically over in Idea Factory. I don't have access to that software to show you a demonstration here, unfortunately. But this is the stage where you get to where you're setting your power and speed levels for the different colors of lines. Okay, again, these are a suggestion here. You may want to basically either decrease the power or increase the speed on some of these to get a safe usage. Better to err on the side of less power and more speed rather than more power and less speed. Okay, because that way it's less likely to start the foam on fire, which is probably something you don't want to happen. Okay. Like I said, it's not a huge deal. They have it happen on a semi-regular basis over there, and it doesn't cause any lasting problems that I'm aware of. But of course, it's a little bit startling if that lights on fire when you're trying to cut your part out. Okay. The only other thing that I'll cover just briefly here is, depending on what kind of foam board you have, you will use different settings. Okay. In our canvas page, we go back to the laser cutter files. Okay. You'll see the Explorer, the Outlaw will be in there, of course, as well. There's some Idea Factory laser settings. Okay. These are for different types of foam: black foam, flight test foam, and white foam. The reason why this says for Jerry and for Tom is because the laser cutters in the Idea Factory are named Tom and Jerry. So the lasers are different between the two of them. One has a higher power level than the other. So depending on which laser you use, you may need to adjust the settings as well. These files can be used on like a flash drive taken over the Idea Factory, and you can tell them, hey, I have a preset for the cutting feed, or the cutting power and speed, and they can help you load that in. Or you can just start from the defaults and kind of work your way from there with some of these settings perhaps. Okay. So if we go back to Illustrator, let's cover briefly how to do the same thing I was just doing, but with a modified part. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my Outlaw. This is part of the demonstration I did in class, at least this semester. I took the elevator of my Outlaw, okay, and you can just select that like this. Control C, and then I pasted it into a fresh document of 30 by 18 inches. And so here's that elevator here. It's pasted in already. And now you can modify the elevator. Now when I had this file here, I changed all the lines. I made them all a bit thicker so we could see them easier. So remember, you always need to make the lines thinner before you go to the laser cutter for it to work right. But let's say like we had in class, we have this elevator here. We want to change the shape of the elevator or change the size of the elevator. Okay. Now this one has to fit in to those two vertical stabilizers on the Outlaw. If you think about the plane itself, it has to fit in there. So we can't adjust these little kind of cutouts very much. They have to stay the same, but we can change the size of the rest of the elevator. Okay. Let's say we want to make the elevator wider, okay, in this up and down direction, we'll say. So let's try and see what happens. Okay. We're going to use our black selection tool. We're going to select the whole elevator. Okay. And over here on the right hand side, you can use this transform command. Okay. So right now it's telling me that the width of the elevator is 2.9 inches and the height is 9.8. And this little link thing right here is connected versus being unconnected like that. If it's connected, it will lock the dimensions to each other. So let's say instead of having it 9 inches up and down, we want to make it 12 inches. So if I say 12, watch this 2.9 up here. When I press enter, okay, it changed to 3.5. It made the whole thing wider proportionally. It kept the dimensions synchronized, we could say. And now it looks great, but it creates a problem because now these slots are not going to match up on our actual plane, and this thing might not be in the right spot either. So let's undo that with a Control Z. And what happens if we break that chain and then we take this and set it to 12, okay, and press enter. Now it just stretched it in that orientation. It didn't actually grow it in the other orientation at all. So it was an unbroken or a broken transformation, broken apart from the two width and height dimensions there. Now that still doesn't quite work because we need these slots to be in the right spot still. Okay, so it still doesn't work that way. But you can do things where you leave the slots in the same spot and create it longer or wider, whatever you want to do. There's a couple ways to do that. All right. So the black tool up here is this direct selection or the selection tool. The white arrow is a direct selection tool. So when we click on the path or the line, we can see all the little kind of points where it turns or changes direction, basically all around the shape. Okay. If you go into the, let's see here, the pen tool and get to the anchor point tool, these are also anchor points. Okay, so you can make things like that happen where the point stays in the same spot, but now you can basically manipulate the lines around it. Whereas the direct selection tool allows me to move this anchor around in a different way, we'll just say. Okay, so the different ways to manipulate the pieces and parts. So if I wanted to make it a little bit wider without messing with these little notches here per se, we can try to focus on this top portion here. So let's use our direct selection tool. I'm just going to kind of drag it up. And I'm just going to grab these points here, these three here. We're going to pull them up, okay, together. Oops, I kind of shifted there. Pull them up together to a certain dimension. Now, you might want to measure this if you want a specific dimension, okay? But it looks like I've moved it. If you can see, it's hard to point at it because it's only showing up on the mouse, but the DX and DY little gray box off to the right of my mouse there is showing me where I'm moving things, okay? So if I go back, let's do Control Z, and I start, okay, it's giving me a measurement of how far I'm moving up. So right now I'm at negative 0.5, so I've moved it about ½ inch longer on this side, okay? I'm going to go further, 2 inches longer on this side, whatever I want to do on this side. I'll try to see if I can match it, okay? It's about 2 inches, not being super precise right now, but we can do the same thing over here. Let's select this area, and we can drag it down. Oops, don't shift it too much, Duke. Okay, 2 inches there, about 2 inches. Not being super precise, I guess. But now you can see the elevator is much wider even though the slot stayed in the same spot and this spot for the control horn stayed in the same spot. So that's something you can do there and kind of change the shape that way. Okay, if you wanted to do something similar with just the elevator portion of the horizontal stabilizer, we can click on this with our direct selection tool again. Okay, and we could select just these rear 2 points and we could move them back. Right, now this is even trickier to keep it straight. That little pink line in the middle kind of helps you synchronize it. So we're moving it back. I mean, that elevator is huge. That's way probably not a good modification in my opinion, but you can make the elevator portion bigger here and leave the horizontal stabilizer the same. Okay. So let's say we want to do something a little bit more artistic, perhaps, instead of just moving the geometric shapes around. If we go to this tool, which is the anchor point tool found underneath the pen tool, okay, I can select an anchor point here. Oops, anchor point here, and if I click and drag, I can kind of get a nice curve going on for the elevator here instead of that kind of sharp cutout. Let's say I want to make it a curved elevator, kind of a little bit more classy or something. I don't know. We'll say this one here. We want to make that a little bit more of a curve. We'll make this one more of a curve as well. I'll just curve it up on that side. Actually looks a little bit better. So let's see if we can get this one to do that. Okay, so keep that one straight, kind of curve it out a little bit. There we go. Now I have much more smooth looking, elevator. Okay. But you notice I curved it out. This line here, this black line, is no longer touching, so we need to edit that one a little bit. We can use that direct selection tool for that. Kind of just drag it up a little bit so it intersects like it did before. Okay, and now we're in business. And that way when the black line gets cut or engraved or whatever, it will still meet the same spot it did before. Okay, so there's a modified piece. Everything still fits. I cut it out. We're in business. Now, of course, once you have this modified to your liking, you still need to remember to change the line colors if you haven't done that already. These colors should already be correct, but we can check them. So go here and we'll make sure we have the RGB red. Okay, good. RGB blue. Okay, and this happens to have a black line as well. RGB black. Okay, good. Those are all correct. And then as a final step, we'll want to select everything in the image and make sure we adjust that line thickness back down to 0.001. Okay. And then we're ready to take that over to the laser cutter and cut it out, just like we were looking at with the earlier example of that smiley face. So I hope this helps a bit with the assignments, both this practice assignment and the other assignment later on in the semester, so you can make the changes you want to, whether they're more performance oriented or just more artistic. Either way, it's kind of fun to be able to do this and create your own, shapes and control surfaces and different things like that for your aircraft. So good luck with the assignment. Let me know if you have any questions. And as always, I have plenty of supplies in the classroom, plenty of foam board and stuff like that. If you need to use an extra sheet, made a mistake, that's totally fine, pretty normal. And we'll get this figured out together so you can make a cool modification later on in the semester for your larger plane. All right, thanks.